so I want to make sure we're clear. We monitor this situation on a regular basis. This week alone, my investigators run call from Friday morning to Friday morning. Since last Friday, we have run or investigated 11 suspected drug overdose deaths. That does not cover the total number of saves that EMS may have experienced. I do not have that number, although I contacted EMS this morning, and to quote the individual I spoke with at EMS, they really appreciate us getting this information out to the public. When I say saves, usually that is whether an EMT or a paramedic rolls up on someone they suspect is having a drug overdose, and they administer something like I'm presenting here. People that are trained within my office are able to administer naloxone. It comes, this is nasal delivery. This is exactly what your local heroes that work EMS call today. Not only are they saving lives when it comes to car crashes and other events, but they're also administering naloxone and treating these individuals and either taking them to the hospital, but if the person does not want to be treated, that's all they can do for these individuals. So with that being said, we talk about 11 saves. I'm also, or was also made aware by a state agency a week and a half ago that Spartanburg set a record the first part of this month with a record number of saves that were reported that numbered 20 in a 1 week period. That is way above normally what we experience in saves. So my hat goes off to, again, these brave EMTs and paramedics and doctors and nurses and all the people that have been asked to do amazing things within the last year. They're also doing this. Thank you for that. We've got a real problem with drugs that people, our citizens, assume are safe right now. When I say they assume they're safe, most people identify a pill from a bottle. You can look it up in the physician's desk reference, PDR, and they think that if it is stamped correctly, shaped correctly, and has the correct color, that it is manufactured by a pharmaceutical company. That is not the case now. In fact, when I interviewed the sheriff's office chemist this week, I was told that they are experiencing, since the first of the year, a large influx of benzodiazepine lookalikes, which is the Valium drugs that people usually use to calm their nerves for stress, for other reasons. And they are either adulterated or manufactured with illicit drugs, one of which is not even characterized in our, or even held to a higher level of accountability for scheduling. Of course, the state legislature, I've been told, is trying to deal with that, but it's a designer drug that is put in these tablets, and it's highly toxic to your system. It will kill you. So the days of buying powder off the street thinking it was heroin have turned into buying powder you think is heroin that is either heroin and fentanyl or straight fentanyl, have now gone to pill mills, and that's exactly what they're called. They're pill presses. These chemicals are being put into these pill presses with the correct color, shape, and number, and our young adults who the parents do not even suspect are taking drugs, or anyone for that matter, taking a drug they buy off the street that they coin or think is safe because of the way it looks. Once we're testing these drugs, they're not safe. In fact, when we suspect one is a drug overdose, a case, an individual, we ask the medical examiner these questions. Medical examiner submits the testing to our lab, and we get result back on that, and he or she issues, whichever medical examiner we're using, issues an opinion based on the toxicology report. I have in my hand since 2019 a copy of the cause of death on accidental cases. Not in this list, it's a total of drug overdoses since 2019. And then my new system took over in September of last year, and on here, not every one of these is a drug overdose, but the ones that are highlighted are. The reason I'm putting this out, there is not one drug or one illicit drug that I'm seeing that has taken the lives of our citizens. My problem is when they take these drugs, for whatever reason, trusting whomever they're getting them from, they don't have any idea what is actually in the pill or whatever they're taking. If they're crushing it up, snorting it, however the delivery, they're ingesting it in their system and it's killing them. I will tell you that I spoke to some of the sheriff's narcotics investigators. They're in my office constantly obtaining information because the sheriff is now investigating these cases alongside of us because he sees and I see, and law enforcement in general, the city police department also is in the middle of these investigations with us and trying to identify the dealers of these drugs to try and curb the death rate that we've got going on in Spartanburg. Just some numbers. Since January 2021, the sheriff's lab that I referred to has seen 28 cases, that's 28 individual cases, of fake alprazolam, which is the benzodiazepine that I was talking about, and it is adulterated. They're seeing at least the majority of them has clonazepam. Clonazepam is the drug that I say is not designated under a schedule currently, and it's highly toxic in small doses. So that's what we're seeing in these pills currently. I'll lay these on the desk there if anyone would like to look those over. I also have an example from state law enforcement. Their lab, I was in touch with them earlier this week. I actually have photos of drugs that are manufactured and not pharmaceutical, okay? These are actually manufactured in pill mills and passed, and they're finding these pills adulterated with various drugs that are not supposed to be in there. I'll lay these up there as well if you guys would like to get a shot of those. I took the liberty of running or going to drugs.com. That's accessible to anyone that has access to the internet, and you can get an example if you're wondering about a particular drug, a pill that you might be taking. It gives the markings and an actual numbering and color on these particular pills, what we've been discussing already. One is oxycodone, which is commonly abused, and then the alprazolam or the other benzodiazepines that we're seeing that are fooling these people and they're actually dying. I'll put these out for inspection as well. These are the ones that are not marked are originals. The ones that are marked here are the ones that are actually being submitted for testing that we found to be from pill mills. Just the numbers. In 2019, my office investigated 210 accidental deaths. Of the 210 cases, 85 were overdose deaths that we attribute to drugs sold as heroin and cocaine that contained illicit fentanyl and subgroups associated with synthetic opioids. Opioids are a large part of the contributor as well. In comparison to that year, 2019, my office investigated 64 traffic fatalities that year. As you can see, the drug overdose way outnumber the traffic fatalities we're having. In 2020, my office investigated 251 accidental deaths. Of the 251, 112 were overdose deaths that began as 2019, but we began to gain information that pill mills were distributing pills so similar in color, shape, and markings that forensic analysts had to change their policies on how they're tested. Usually whenever they got them in and they fit the description we're talking about, they didn't have to test them. Now they realize they've got to be tested. We've got to know what's contained in these pills. This year until now, my office has investigated 36 overdose deaths. The total accidental causes currently stand at 71, and we've investigated 20 traffic fatalities thus far. I checked with my investigative staff this morning. I believe I've already mentioned in the last week 11 suspected drug overdose deaths. It's way too much. So we've got the data that lives are being saved when EMS is being called. We've got the data that our drug deaths are increasing. What I'm asking is the general public, if you know anyone you suspect of taking illegal drugs, whether it be pills or what it is, please pass on and make sure they understand that cartels and other nefarious agencies are manufacturing these drugs and sending them into our country, and they're making their way to our state and our county, and everyone that comes in contact with these drugs is being affected adversely one way or another. Obviously, if it comes to me, it's the worst case of adversity that anyone could expect. And if it's someone you care about and love, it's going to be devastating. My investigators and I have to look in the faces of these family and friends day in and day out. That's part of our job. But if we can prevent this from happening, that's why I've called and asked you guys here today. Let's educate the public. Let's educate our young people. I hear story after story. I stay in contact with the police investigators and everyone else that are out here trying to make a difference. And I spoke to one this morning. He's basically tired. He's not tired of investigating these cases. What he's tired of is having to go with us and talk to families in cases where someone young and full of life that has their whole life ahead of them, getting ready to graduate high school or college, or maybe even from college to the real world, the working world, won't be able to do that because of a very bad mistake about something they didn't know about. And I'd like everyone to know, if you are given a pill by someone and you're told that it's taken from their mom, dad, grandmother's cabinet, don't take the pill. We've been begging on that for years. I've been at the forefront of this opiate fight since it began. I was appointed by the previous governor to the Prescription Drug Task Force. I've been on the forefront, or at least trying. I've taught state classes. Anyone that will listen, I'm begging my county and surrounding areas, please listen. Please take a moment. Please check these pills. If you don't get them from a pharmacy, if they're not prescribed by your physician, if they're not straight from the pharmacy, don't take these pills, because I've got a lot of innocent, when I say innocent people, these are people that are trying drugs for the first time, or they're taking drugs and they think they're safe because, as I've already described, they're in pill and everything looks correct, and it not be that way. And I've got too many people dying out here of drug overdoses, and I'd like to see it stop. I really would. That's what I've got, guys, and I really appreciate it. I'll answer any questions you might have.
So what's the ages that you're seeing the youngest to the oldest?
As young as 16 on up into the 60s.
And why now, though? Why bring this up when it's been going on for so long?
We have educated, or I've had you in here before when this fight started. In fact, I believe the news agencies have been in my office several times, but now we've got the added problem, again, like I talked about, the drug labs having to change their policies on how these drugs are tested. They used to be able to look at them, and the assumption was there is more than an assumption that there was nothing that wasn't supposed to be in that pill. Now you've got illegal pill mills, another way these drug dealers have figured out or found they could get this information out. And some of these pills are being adulterated with heroin, fentanyl, a number of other very dangerous drugs. And a kid thinks or a young adult thinks they're taking something that's going to ease their nerves, and it actually takes their breath away.
How much of it do you credit the pandemic being part of why we're seeing more?
Well, we have, there's a lot of depression that was associated with the pandemic. There was a lot of unavailability or not being able to be around your friends and family. And some people have withdrawn and had looked at other avenues to occupy their time. That is a possibility, although I haven't studied it. I don't have any scientific data. Personally, though, in interviewing people and being out here in the public, that's what I gather from the problem we're having.
You mentioned like websites like drugs.com. What are some other methods that people can use to educate themselves?
Essentially, if you are taking a drug or you're looking at a pill you think, again, I'll stress, no amount of research is going to help you because you don't know what's contained in that drug unless you get that drug from a pharmacy as it has been prescribed by a doctor. That is really now the only control you're going to have to ensure that the meds you're taking are actually what you need to be taking and not something added to it by an illicit, drug pill maker or whatever that could take your life. This is not a scare tactic. I would like to emphasize that to the public. I believe what everyone does is their own business. The problem we've got here is when you ingest something that you think is authentic and it's not, and it takes your life or it adversely affects you for the rest of your life, then that's what I'd like to see prevented.
Do you think some of this stuff is done accidental, is innocent, but turns out to be a tragic situation?
It's quite possible. Depending on the amounts, there are a lot of factors to take in consideration when you're dealing with an overdose death. We rule these cases accidentals. I do have some that contain prescription drugs that are suicides, but they're nowhere near the number of the accidental deaths that we're experiencing here, and it's definitely tragic. It's tragic.
You talked about investigators being tired. Talk about that initial knock on the door when you talk to these families. Describe what that's like.
When my staff goes to a door, and we prefer, in fact, I just about require that interaction to be personal. Unless we're pressed over the telephone, we're not going to lie to anyone, but be careful what you demand of us because we're there to help. We would prefer to be there personally with someone, and most of the time when we call, we'll just tell you we're with Spartanburg County. When we get there, the majority of the people that we deal with have no idea what we're doing there, and a lot of that's trauma, very tragic. There are people that actually walk in on people they love, and of course they're traumatized initially. It's our job to inform them, tell them the truth about how somebody they care about died, and to try and comfort them and get them through that process. It's tough. I don't mind telling you that I've got one staff member here lately that we've had to have some counseling with the chaplain because of the number of cases we're having and the adverse effects it has on our people because of dealing with death day in and day out. This is a job I ran for, a responsibility I take, and I'm proud of the work we're doing, but also if we can prevent any of these deaths, and I've been in front of you guys about traffic fatalities and everything else, this is a glaring problem in our county currently, and I'd like to ensure that we're doing everything we can to curb the rising death rate that we're seeing.
We talked about having another county self out. What are you guys talking about? I know you guys get together, parks and the other ones. What do you guys?
Well, my other cohorts around the state, there are a total of 46 of us, and I'm talking about the coroners, talk constantly. The coroner in Charleston County is also the previous and current coroner in Charleston, are trying to make great strides in prevention as well. And we talk about that from time to time. We pass ideas back and forth. Not one of us can do this alone. I'm asking for the public's help. I can't do this. You guys can't do this by yourself. We need the public's help, and the only way we're going to curb this is to bring an awareness to it. Listen, I've got people dying, and when we check their personal belongings on their body, they're carrying around this stuff. They know there's an inherent danger, but nobody's there to administer it to them, okay? In other words, they know there's an inherent danger. They could lose their life by taking it. Guys, if you need help, there are counseling abilities, treatment centers that you can go to. Get some help. I really don't want to have to work your case. My staff really doesn't want to have to work your case. We will. We will talk to your family and friends if that's the case. But seek help. There are professionals out here that are willing to help you if you need help. Please seek help. Any other questions, guys? Thank you so much for coming in. Yes, sir.
I do have one question off this topic a little bit. There was a fire at our street this morning.
Yes.
Let me ask you, was it confirmed that there was a death in this fire?
I have not been told it's a confirmed death. I don't have that information currently. I've been, working on this, making sure I had all my information together for you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it. Can we get a few shots of the?
Feel free.
As well?
I'm sorry?
That as well. I was asking with some shots of that as well.
Sure.
Okay, I can. Okay.
Is that what's in that bag? What's that?
Do you want me to close it? Taking photos.
Is that all that's in that bag? Is this right here?
This bag, yeah, I carried 2 doses. That's the second dose. And this is actually issued by the state to law enforcement officers. So a majority of your law enforcement officers are also trained on how to carry and to administer naloxone as well. Any of that you're flipping through currently, you can find on drugs.com, but I just want to make sure you guys were aware.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm. And then what's under